This is ChangeMakers with Katie Goar, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Today's changemaker is the president and CEO of the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District, Dontrelle Young Foster. She leads housing work affecting thousands of lives across Birmingham. Dontrelle Young Foster has been bringing more than 2 decades of experience and deep housing knowledge to Alabama. So, Dontrelle, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
I appreciate this. I've been to Birmingham several times, and you guys have an amazing city. And I've been to your housing authority. We've been partners and collaborators. And so it is with much honor that we bring you here because you have such a gift in this space. And I particularly think of a moment when I landed in Birmingham and I like to talk to the taxi driver or the bus driver, and one of the things I asked him this last time I was there, I said, "So, what's going on with housing and what's going on with the neighborhoods downtown?" And you are not gonna believe this, but the cab driver said to me, he goes, "Look at this neighborhood. It used to be so different and so much more difficult, but they've really changed it up." And I said, "Oh, who's doing that?" And he said, "The housing authority." So I am so thrilled when I hear that from just a common neighbor. And I'm really glad to have a chance for you to explain exactly what's going on. So let's get started and jump right in it. But first of all, before we go through all the projects and all of the new initiatives you're doing, why don't you first tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in housing?
Actually, I've started with the Housing Authority as a temporary employee. After graduating from college, primarily looking for a job. My background is in finance and accounting. So I was kind of like the number cruncher when I started here. I was, doing the budget, payroll, account analyst, those type of functions without really understanding the mission. So um, everything changed when I transferred to the executive department. The executive director at the time wanted someone in the space where they understood the budgets and can relate that to her going forward, based on information I presented to the office. So there is when I began to understand the importance of the work. I began to understand the value of the programs and resources that were brought to the residents. So I do want to share like my first encounter I had with the residents, and that was when I was assigned to assist with the resident council election. And so serving as a liaison between the council president advisory board and the executive director at the time, I found that, the council presidents were incredibly supportive. They were just so welcoming to them. They treated me like I was family. So through that experience, I felt like that's when I really began to love the work that I do. I became away from the numbers and came into the real life touching the families and support that we provide to them.
So you've been there for quite a while now. And does your impression about what housing used to look like compared to today, does that also reflect that taxi driver's view of how housing has changed?
Oh, absolutely. When we transform our properties, we don't just actually put our hands and our work into the property alone. We try to transform the community as a whole. And so when you are reaching out to the neighborhoods, because everything that we do not only affects the residents, but the stakeholders in the neighborhood and the communities, and also it provides opportunity for our residents to have a better quality of life. We have legacy properties that's been around for number of years, and so they're all deteriorating at the same time. So you have to identify a way to put our hands on the pulse and move
Mhm,
those to the way that our residents have a better quality of living. So yes,
mhm.
absolutely. And the story you share was very heartfelt because that's the kind of product we want to put in place so that it doesn't look like public housing.
Yeah. And, he was one of your cheerleaders and the fact that he was so proud of what was happening in the
Yes.
community. And isn't that exactly, what we want? I mean, it's one thing for us housers, it's one thing for developers, it's one thing for, regulators to be proud of what we've done, but when you can generate that much community endorsement, you guys are really doing something very, very well there.
Just pleased to hear.
So the agency has gone through a couple transitions, and I one of the things about your leadership though, it's great because you are really, really vested and attached to what's happening there as the agency. But what are some of your wisdom points that you've learned through being at the agency now for quite a while and seeing some leadership trends? Like, how are you bringing that to what you want to accomplish now?
Yes, as I mentioned, well, I've been with this agency for 25 years to be exact this year. And so we've saw many changes becoming for the agency with relates to the financing being decreased, um, being able to use private public partnerships to redevelop some of these properties. So we just been very intentional of trying to continue to move and trend as the agency changes. As I'm sure you're aware that we had the opportunity to celebrate our 90th anniversary, which is a huge milestone for the Housing Authority, and we use that tagline: legacy, opportunity, and impact. Because for those 90 years, HABD has provided safe, affordable housing as a foundation for opportunity, helping generations assess stability, education, and workforce mobility. So today we continue this mission by redeveloping those decade-old properties I just shared, creating vital public-private partnerships, which I just talked about, and enhancing self-sufficiency for those we serve. So as we continue to honor that past and the generational time that's passed, we remain committed to sustainable growth and expanding pathways to home ownership and economic mobility. When I talked about not just focusing on the property alone, but also community wide, that allows us to move to build our economic wealth. And so I just say that we are standing and we're still building and we're using our innovative ways to do that. So this 90th year milestone has been a testament to our impact and transformation. So we have a responsibility to continue to shape those decades to come. So we're very, very excited and very, very intentional to move those things forward because we have a portfolio of 12 communities that we want to transform and bring great life to our residents.
Well, it definitely seems like you have been able to unlock the keys to how to revitalize communities. And with these 12 communities you're talking about, what's your vision? What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? What do you want it to do?
So we want to give our residents a better quality of life. And to do that, not only build bricks and mortar, but we want to educate our residents. So when we're building these brand new beautiful buildings in these great communities, we want to prepare our residents to move with them. So the vision is to keep our hands on our residents to ensure that when we build these communities, they are the first to call this property home. So, we have what we call this Thrive 2035, and that is the transformational plan that we are seeking to transform our entire portfolio. Yes, we have probably about 9 years left in that plan, but we're gonna be very aggressive in ensuring that we're, being intentional to move those properties forward. And we may not do because we it's a that's about 3,500 units, and, realistically, we can't touch every single unit within that time period, but we wanna make sure that each property, there's a change, there's a difference. So next time you take cab ride, he's telling you out of all the properties that he's seen that was distressed, are in a better spot. So that's what we want to present to in our communities.
Amazing. What do you think have been some of your lessons that you've learned the hard way through going through this development? Because development is very, very hard. So, can you give us some cheat codes to some of those lessons you've learned the hard way through this?
It would be the same as any other industry. Real estate is the new trend for public housing now. And so you have to have the capacity and the knowledge and skills to help us move those initiatives forward. And so I don't say lesson learned, but something we're going to do is to identify some supportive ways to help us move these forward. I spoke about the Thrive 2035 plan and how years has passed, there's been some leadership changes. And so we can't just pause because those things occur. We have to keep things moving. And so to do that, we want to ensure that we're identifying people that can support and make sure we in a position to bring the properties and the communities and the residents to the forefront of everything that we do. So our goal is to ensure that we're just staying positive and in how we're moving.
Mhm. What do you think gets most overlooked or misunderstood with what you're trying to accomplish, whether that's development or just being in the community? Is there something that you can speak to that you wish everybody knew or you wish everybody realized and it wasn't overlooked?
A lot of time I speak about educating our residents. Um, a lot of times people feel like we're enabling them because of some of the things, some of the resources that are in place. But, there are challenges. And, with today's, we've had several resources that are put in place to help us educate and provide to our residents and move forward. But when those resources are taken away from our residents, what do they have to rely on? And so that's when we have to strongly reach out to our partners to help fill in those gaps so that we're able to provide the resources that they need. We have today family self-sufficiency program with set goals for our residents and allow them to build an escrow account so that they're able to put aside funds to help them whether they want to, be a homeowner, go back to school, or start their own business, entrepreneur, those things. So I have conversation with the residents and say, without housing, they're one day away from homelessness. So we want to make sure that we're support those residents.
I think of it with my kids because sometimes I don't know the line between helping them, enabling them, and then pushing them out the door.
Right. Right.
And if we don't know that line, if it's not real clear when you're a parent, then it's really, really hard when you're running these huge programs for people who are at all different levels of development and all different levels of what they want to achieve. And that's why you hit this, that those family self-sufficiency programs are great because people are traveling through life at different sectors and different intersections. And we don't know if they're one bed away from homelessness or if they're like, this is a moment by which I can stabilize because I'm going to be able to mobilize. And that's a really hard line, isn't it, to know where we are. I've just recently started talking about and opening up about my own homelessness when I was a child and when I lived in a tent. And as I've gone through openly talking about that I have referenced this, that it was a hand up that helped us
Mhm.
get out of homelessness and move into a rental situation, but that it was a hand up, not a handout. And that is exactly what you are able to do in your platforms and your programs now as well. And thinking of housing with a different reframe of saying, this is our chance to provide a hand up, not a hand out. That changes how we look at housing, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And it also helps us to identify our purpose as a person. My purpose is my mission, and I'm very grateful that I'm able to fulfill my mission, and that is to serve. So this is a calling I embrace. I've served in this position as interim for 4 times before officially accepting this role. So fulfilling the mission that God has for me required me to step out of my comfort zone. And that journey has led me to where I am today. So I clearly understand what you're saying because it's hard sometimes when it becomes to your background and people sees you where you came from and not where you're headed. So, been very beneficial because, again, during my tenure at HABD, I have served in several capacities. And so my commitment solidified when I saw how the programs and grants we applied for directly benefiting our residents and creating a lasting positive impact based on, I talked about family self-sufficiency and the other programs that we have in place. So we're very grateful to be able to utilize those resources to promote self-sufficiency.
Mhm. Well, a beautiful journey to come into the agency like you did with your kind of background and then just really be a person who can keep leveling up. So that's a definite testimony of you. Don't shy away from that
Mhm,
moment.
mhm,
And you even got CEO of the year. So,
mhm.
it's one thing to sit in the chair, and it's another thing to excel in the chair. So, you clearly are doing that. What was it like to get CEO of the year? Tell us some about that.
Oh, I was very grateful. I was in a room with a lot of great CEOs and just doing great work. And so it was a true privilege to just be among those individuals. Being a CEO is hard work, for any agency or entity. And so sometimes people don't realize the magnitude of work that it takes to run an agency, and touching so many families because we serve 23,000 families, touching all those families and ensuring that we're providing the resources they need. I can be in a space sometimes and many people tell me, I wouldn't want your job for nothing. Because, again, some people do understand, how many people your lives you're trying to change and trying to make betterment for, the opportunities, I just really it's proves to be a beacon of hope for so many people, you know. And it's a great privilege when you receive gratitude from residents, whether they're saying you're simply listening to them or assisting with housing or promoting workforce development and continuing education. So when you hear someone tell you thank you for those things that you've done for them, it makes it worth it, 100% worth all the
Mhm.
late nights and afternoons and, time that you commit to
Right.
doing the work that you're called to do. So
Right. And that calling moment and that mission, it's so part of who you are, but it can really be even more daunting because it takes a toll on you when your heart is connected. You're not just reading spreadsheets. You're not just looking at preventative maintenance plans, right? Like you're actually knowing the attachment to what you're doing in the lives of people. Which when you think about this impact, one thing I was reading about was your work through Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And why don't you tell us more about what you're doing in that space? Because that's a good peek into how you're also leading with mission.
yeah, so they're doing great work through the Big Brother Big Sister nonprofit that's bringing in funds to support their endeavors. And in a lot of these spaces, because we serve 23,000 families across the city of Birmingham, in some capacity, you're touching our residents. And so I try to identify ways to partner with them. Right now, they're doing a bowls for kids' sake. What they do is they take a weekend and take the kids out to bowl to relax their mind. And they have their big brothers and their big sisters to provide resources. Just if it's just time, taking them out to the movies or bowling, and just being present in their life, because you never know what someone's going through in their household. So just knowing that someone cares and take the time out of their day to support you is just outstanding. We have our board meetings. We always have a big brother, big sister, and their little to come and just share their story and how they're connected with each other and all the things that they do together, to just occupies each other's time. Sometimes the big say the littles are saving them sometimes because of,
Yeah.
the how they're able to connect and share.
Mhm. I just heard that the number one draft pick for the NFL was a participant in not as a volunteer, but when that person was young, they were a participant in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and they they talk about that experience. And so there's true impact that happens with that program. So what a great partnership you're leading there, and look forward to hearing more about how that changes lives. Let's talk about some of this. I want to loop back to your you mentioned here. I want to loop back to your 2035 plan and think about it in like the future terms here now. You've got a set number of units, you've got a development goal, but looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what outcome would you think you want to be most proud of in 5 to 10 years? When you think about your legacy, when you think about your legacy, when you think about this plan, is there something that you could say, this is what I want to be able to hold up and be most proud of?
Yes, we talk about redeveloping our legacy properties. And so when we talk about redeveloping our legacy property, we're touching individuals that are currently occupying those units. And so most times we don't think about the residents that are waiting to be housed. So there's an extremely long waiting list of individuals that's waiting to find a home that is, again, one day away from being homeless. And so I want to be able to be in a position where we're able to build these partnerships, private public partnerships, to address the lack of affordable housing in the city of Birmingham, and being able to you know, break the trend of when we go through these redevelopments, we're utilizing the funds that are provided to us on a federal level, and we know those funds are decreasing. So how can we build our revenue so we don't have to utilize and rely on those funds that has these restrictions and regulations to, we can't use them the way we really need to use them to be able to bring more affordable housing in the community. There's a significant need and growing where individuals want to own their own home. They want to bring asset to their generation. So, being able to build that generational wealth versus talk about generational poverty. So, it would be just an outstanding feeling to be able to say that so many lives that we've touched, we've brought so many units in affordable housing to the city of Birmingham when there was a lack of, due to the gap of financing and the resources that we need to ensure that we're bringing these houses, not only houses, but economic wealth, building communities where people have a place to take their kids to daycare so that they can work. That's one of the things that we're doing. We built a community, redeveloped a community, and maybe about, I say it was about maybe 10 years ago. And now there was a daycare center sitting on that property that was dormant for long as I was in working for the agency. So we're now being able to redevelop that daycare so that it can become a resource to the residents when they're trying to identify a place to work, and being able to comfortably say they can take, have resources like that to support their um, endeavors.
Yeah, you guys have some great before and after pictures, don't you, of what you've done?
Yes.
Mhm. So I have a question. This is kind of veering off a little bit here, but you openly talk about this, so I feel like we can go down that path. But you often speak about spirituality and leadership commingled here. How does what you speak about, how is that reflective of, how you're leading or how you're grounded? Do you wanna tell us some more about that?
I'm a native from Selma. And, Selma is naturally recognized as the birthplace of pivotal moments in the civil rights movement, including the 1965 March across the Edmonds Pettus Bridge that are still commemorated today during the Bridge Crossing Jubilee, which is actually scheduled to occur next week. So I don't know if anyone will understand, but growing up in Selma taught me that progress requires courage, faith, and collective action. In a city where history was made, I learned early on that challenges do not define me. Rather, you are defined by how you respond to them. And this foundation shaped my commitment to service, equity, and expanding opportunities for others. I lived in public housing, and during the early part of my life, I experienced firsthand the realities of racism, injustice, and the stereotypes associated with generational poverty. So those experiences, they didn't change my values, but I was able to carry them with me. And so understanding what that life was like, growing up at a young age, and being able to identify myself with individuals that I'm serving today. You have to stay grounded. And I hear a lot of people speak about my humbleness, and sometimes I hear that I'm a little too humbled, but that helps me remain grounded because again, the work that I do is the mission, and I'm able to serve that mission in this role that I am in. So I always want people to understand that the work that I do, I didn't I feel like I know for certain that I didn't place myself in this role. I think it was God-led, and so that's why I am so confident that the work that I will be doing and the team that I have, we're gonna be able to, be successful in that work, and also understand that, we understand the need of our residents, and the passion that we hold to do that is helps me be the leader that I need to be to ensure that the work gets done. So
Mhm.
that's
It's inspiring to hear that undercurrent that you have that is grounding you for your mission, because I'm sure when the storms come, y I'm sure that they are, loud and shaking, but, it's good to hear what your grounding principles are there. I've been to Selma. It's been a couple years ago, but we did, some engagement work there, and one of the things when I was walking around several of the properties in Selma and even went to the bridge and, there's definitely imprints of both, past pain, and yet there's also this future hope too, and I think that's a difficult balance to recognize both, regardless of what city you're in, but especially in a city like Selma. I didn't actually know that that was part of your backstory, so thank you for sharing it in this safe space, and I hope that many of our listeners will, you know, take that pause to hear where you've been and, what you've learned along the way, and then now how you're leading. Definitely impressive from on multiple different takeaways there. So thank
yes.
you very much.
You're welcome, because I do believe that firmly that everyone deserves an opportunity to succeed regardless of where they live. And
Mhm.
so I have been a testament to that. So I'm grateful to be in that space.
Yep. So if there are any young professionals that are listening here, because I know there are a few. I won't call them out by name. In fact, we actually have a couple housing authorities who, as part of their onboarding, they require a few of their new people to pick a couple of podcasts and listen and report back. So I want to loop in because your journey has been quite inspiring. So I want to loop them into this conversation remotely. But for the young professionals out there that are listening, what would be a couple of takeaways that you would want them to um, to be encouraged by, or to maybe go out and incorporate some things into their professional journey?
Oh, absolutely. And this kind of ties back to a question you asked me previously, what I would do different. And so I would strongly encourage you to get a support group. You need mentors, regardless of how experienced you think you are, get you a support group that you can reach out to, kind of strategize with, and, just share some of the unknowns, the challenges, because you're not alone. All of us has been through it, been through the trenches and trying to identify ways to address the challenges that come before us. You come to work each day with an agenda and a focus, and then it get twisted, into something that occurred on site. Crime is heavy in some of our properties. You have to address the media. When you're put in a position where you're not sure how to address those. We have housing authorities that don't necessarily have the funding to bring in supportive positions to help guide us through those things. And so it's really helpful to be able to pick up the phone and just have a conversation with someone to kind of just say, you're not alone. Let's work this out. Having that mentor. So that is the biggest thing. Don't think you're in it alone. Just, be welcoming to pick up the phone. There are so many professionals out there that welcomes the opportunity. I have several, and I know that, there's groups that, have these sessions for onboarding new EDs that help them understand what to do when you're onboarding, what are some of the expectations. And so that would take you a long way and help in more ways than one. So yes, that'd be the biggest advice I could give.
So, as we are closing out here, is there anything we missed that you want to bring forward? It's been a great conversation, but I also don't want to make sure that we have skipped over something that you want to highlight.
No, I just want to say just thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast to share the things that the housing authorities do. And, we have several social media platforms. Please join us, tag on to see some things that we're doing. Again, just thank you for allowing me the time to just share some of the things that we're doing. We have some new initiatives coming up in the next 2 years that we're working on. So please stay tuned.
Excellent. You guys have a full plate down there, but you are clearly making a difference. So thank you so much for bringing what you're doing to the ChangeMakers platform. Again, I've been talking with Dontrelle Young Foster, the president and CEO of the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District in Alabama.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Goar. To find out more about Katie, go to Quadel.com. That's Quadel.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.